In this video, I'm covering what the Emu's pilot program is and the goals that we're trying to achieve with that. The pilot program is a program that we have started about in 2017 as a way to guide builders through the first or second passive house project. It means that the builder has taken our Emu training and the project has gone through the project boost random modeling. We made a zip folder available for people that are interested, and I have it on my desktop here. And to go over what the pilot is, I'm going to start off with opening the folder and looking for Schedule A, Scope of Services, because this has a breakdown of the different tiers that we have in the pilot program. Specifically, we have 3 tiers in the pilot. Starting from the top, tier 3 is the most complete one, which includes project certification, either as a PHI passive house or a PHI low energy building. Guided is a service that where we do all the things that we provide as tier 3 minus the certification. So these two, guided and certified pilot, we Emu provide the architect and the builder with standardized construction details for the building envelope, the specs associated with meeting passive house in terms of insulation, air barrier, ERV or HRV fresh air system, the blower door test, all of those requirements, as well as for tier 2 and 3, we support the design team through design and construction of the project. And that breakdown is shown in this page. Down here, you will see what is required, what is optional but recommended, what is included, and what is not included. So you see here, for example, as a prerequisite for the training, the boost, what we used to call the preliminary passive house review is now called the Emu Boost. And so for tier 3 is where you're going to see what is included in this column. Tier 2, you're going to see what is included in this column in the middle. And tier 1 is really something meant for builders that have done already a couple of passive projects, and they're just looking for construction details and specs, but they're not looking for guidance as much as they needed in their first project. So tier 3 is more for returning builders that have acquired quite a bit of experience through the first or second completed passive project, and so they don't need the full guided pilot, and they're not interested in certifying. And you can see here the breakdown. Again, have a look at this PDF because it's very detailed, and this explains what we provide as the different tiers. Now, the typical workflow, we have flow charts. I'm taking the one for the passive house, the certified pilot. You see here, on the left-hand side, the stakeholders on the project, the owner, the builder, the architect, and us, Emu, as well as the passive house certified, because this is the flow chart for the most complete pilot, that is pilot tier 3. So for all pilots, we assume we have done the project boost or preliminary passive house review, they are the same thing, as a way to determine what the project needs. So that is the boost or PPHR, preliminary passive house review, is always step 1. Then if it does make sense for the project to either pursue certification, or if the client or builder requires that guidance through the process, or if it makes sense for us to be the ones to provide construction details for a project, then the project becomes a pilot. So the pilot is always step 2, which follows step 1, that is always the boost. And you can see the breakdown and the collaboration during design between the architects and us and between us and the structural. So we are in the design stage for tier 2 and tier 3. We are an active part of the design team, and we are the ones that provide the team with the details from our standardized library of passive house construction details. Then during pricing stage, we support the builder in reviewing quotes from, for example, window manufacturers, fresh air ventilation suppliers, and anything having to do with the passive house envelope. There are manufacturers that provide dedicated pricing for Emu pilots, and that is something that is that is available once the project actually becomes a pilot, and we can talk more about that. But this, as you can see here in the breakdown, applies to all tiers of the pilot. Now, of the same from the same folder, you can then see some examples of details and specs that we provide as part of the pilot. For example, we have this is an overview of all the specs that we provide. So this is something that makes it easy to navigate. We really take the lead on drawings and specs for the passive house envelope. So in other words, it takes on some of the scope that is typically allocated to the architect. Then when it comes to typical assemblies, this is just a typical floor, typical slab. These are drawings that we would issue depending on what your project is, but they come from our library of standardized details. And for each of these assemblies, we provide specs for what to have in terms of insulation and air barrier. So this describes, the quality, the expectation in terms of install, more details on how to read drawings, and then we jump into the specs for the individual products to have for each individual layer of the assembly, so that this can be utilized by the builder, and this replaces the specs that an architect typically have in their drawing set. More on the specs that we provide, the Windows specs and the ERV specs is something that is consistent with what we issue in step 1. Step 1 is always the boost, always what we used to call the preliminary passive house review, PPHR. And so in getting into the pilot, we just keep on updating the requirements and the specs for the project for windows and doors. Now, if a project is in a hot climate, we provide specs for colors and shading because that becomes also important to control overheating in the summertime. So this is something that we provide as part of the pilot in those climate zones where this becomes relevant. Other miscellaneous, this is something that we actually keep on growing. We have specific specs for the electrician, for the plumber, for the HVAC installer, all details that have come up in 5+ years of doing pilots, and this helps a lot with providing off-the-shelf solution to meet passive house. So just to give some more information here, looking at junction details, for example, you see that we are very thorough in the details that we provide, and we provide a lot of instructions in terms of do this before you do that, in terms of sequencing, because in our experience that becomes the bigger part of having a successful passive house project and meeting very airtight building envelopes. So have a look at this, and please let me know if you have any questions about that. But this summarizes what we provide in terms of the pilot, because we found this to be a very streamlined way for projects to meet passive house without having to reinvent the wheel every single time.